Welcome to installment number 336 of the Mitzvahs as enumerated by Maimonides, the Rambam. We are in the home stretch. We are literally in the final days of the book of Maimonides when we will be fully completing it. So we are at the very end. What a huge milestone. Today we are discussing the mitzvah of a Jewish king. We start with positive commandment number 173, which is the mitzvah to appoint a Jewish king. We have negative commandment 362, which is the prohibition of appointing a king who was not born Jewish. And then we have a few mitzvahs pertaining to the king himself. So we have negative commandment 364, which is the prohibition for a king to have too many wives. Negative commandment 363, the prohibition for a king to have too many horses. And finally, negative commandment 365, which is the prohibition to have too much money. Now, what's interesting is that in the very beginning, the Jewish people came to the prophet Samuel and they said they wanted a king, just like all the other nations of the world. And Samuel was very upset to this. He said, you have God. This is disrespecting Hashem to demand to have another king. Besides for that, we already have Hashem. Why would you need another king? And of course, what he was really upset about, and now that is a pretty strange thing to be upset about when we know that there is actually a mitzvah in the Torah to have a king. So why should Samuel the prophet be getting upset? And the reason was, while yes, it is a mitzvah to have a king because the king is meant to bring you closer to God. And when you see the humility of the king and you see a king walking, it's meant to remind you of the spiritual King of Kings, God, that we have. And it's meant to arouse within you that love and that humility too towards God. However, the mistake here, the problem here was that they didn't come to him and say, we want a king that will help us be closer to God. Rather, they said, we want a king just like all the other nations. And that was the issue that Samuel had. Regardless, God said, that's okay. They want a king. Let them have a king. It's okay. It's not a bad thing. And it can lead to good things as well. And a king is meant to guide us into the right direction. It is meant to dissolve disagreements and just kind of keep law and order. Now, what's interesting about all of these laws is that we are actually, that they were given, that they couldn't have too many wives, too many horses, too much money. They were actually given explanations as to why that is. They shouldn't have too many wives, lest it may turn their hearts astray, that wives have a very strong power, and too many wives can lead the king into the wrong direction. Too many horses, very interestingly, because it may lead you to return to Egypt where there are many horses. And what's interesting is that King Solomon, the wisest king of all kings, actually violated all three of these things. Why so? How is it possible? He thought to himself, I am Solomon. I'm the wisest of all people. I'll never fall prey to these things. I'll never end up my heart being turned from too many wives or people ending up down in Egypt because of too many horses. And we see that what happened was he did indeed violate these, and these things did indeed come to fruition. Indeed, his heart was swayed, and indeed, people did end up down in Egypt. This is really coming to teach us a very important lesson, that sometimes there is a reasoning to a mitzvah, but God hides it from us. Because once we know that reason, it's so easy to reason with it. It's so easy to rationalize it. And thus, it is so easy to come to transgressing it and so easy to sinning. So sometimes it's actually better not to know the reason why we do things and to do them solely for the act of God, solely for becoming more spiritual, solely for our connection with God, rather than understanding where it's coming from. Have a wonderful day.